In the mood to stitch, but not sure what you want to work on? Sounds like it's time for some cross stitch roulette. Hey everyone, I'm Jackie from Adam Hart Cross Stitch, and this week's video is going to be a Stitch With Me video. Really, this is just a really nice block of the week where I will sit down and have some dedicated stitching time, which I desperately need. And since I am someone who really struggles with decision fatigue, I have found that a little spinning wheel that decides the project I'm going to work on for me has really been a game changer. For my Stitch With Me sessions, sometimes I keep it nice and chatty, other times it's really chill and relaxed. But since I've been posting cross-stitch content online for quite a few years now, I tend to see like similar questions come in over and over again. So I figure that whatever we work on today, I will definitely talk through kind of all the little things I'm doing and try to answer some of those more common questions and comments that I see come through. So without further ado, let's go ahead and give the wheel a spin. Fuchsias. Okay, I've worked on this one before in Stitch With Me sessions. This is a full coverage chart and I'm stitching it using the parking method, which is definitely where I get the most amount of questions that come in. So I think this is going to be a fun one. So I'm going to go ahead and get this project pulled out and I'll give you all of the project details as I'm doing that. And then we will go ahead and get to stitching. All right, so let's just get this out of the way. These project bags. I make these myself. The pattern is not my own though, so I will link to the pattern you can buy if you want to make this. I make them for my own use. I don't sell the finished ones I make. I get questions about these each and every time they pop up on a video, and then I'll have people emailing me, you know, I can't find them for sale on your website. I'm like, I just make them for me. Trust me, I'm not a great enough sewist to be selling this like in a million years. So, all right, but this is where we are on this project. I think this is one of the more beautiful whips I have. Like it really takes my breath away how beautiful it is when I look at it. I know I'm getting so close to the top row page finish, slowly but surely. This is going on a couple of years now, and I still have not completed the top row of pages, but that's okay. The chart is from Heaven and Earth Designs. The original artwork is by Dave Bartholet. I am stitching this 1/1 on easy count, 28 count even weave fabric. So it comes pre-gridded. The grid lines wash out at the end, and I like using 28 count and stitching 1/1. That's the type of coverage you get. So I really like that. Good amount of floss for this project. I do just sort everything in like numerical number order on these big 3-inch storage rings. I have these on Annie's keepers. I did kit this project up way before I ever started making floss drops on my own. So these are on Annie's keepers. I've got kind of just a collection of all my Q-snap pieces, which is definitely how I prefer to put my work on a frame. I do also fold the fabric over when I do this, help keep it out of the way. Okay, and sadly, my audio did die. But what I was saying here is, especially when I'm covering work that has already been stitched, I like to fold the fabric over the stitching before putting the Q-snap clamp on. I just feel like it helps protect it. I'm also using the Lowry table clamp. It is kind of pricey, but I really do love it. I hate to say I love it because it's expensive, but it really is fantastic. And if you're traveling a lot and like having two hands to stitch with, it really is great. And I have the Q-snap corner clamp attachment to it. And especially for filming, this is such a better setup. I love my Stitchy Spot. I love my Lowry floor stand, but it is a little difficult to film in that space. So this has really been a game changer. For all of my Haid patterns, I like having them on Pattern Keeper. If you're not familiar with any of these cross-stitch like pattern tracking apps, I do have a whole video talking about the two most popular, which is Pattern Keeper and Markup RXP. So I'll include a link to that video if you have questions or just aren't familiar with either of those. And the jumping off point for this pattern right now is so close to 15% completed. All right, so I realized my microphone has completely died. So we are just going to keep our fingers crossed that the sound quality is okay with this. I think because I am nice and close to the camera, hopefully it should be fine. But basically, I am just liking to work down mostly in columns. So I'm just working my way every 10 by 10 grid down. And then as I finish, I move to the next column and I work my way down these 10 by 10 grids. And I'm doing that in pages. I just find it's like the easiest way for my brain. So this is like the bottom of page 3. So that's why I end here at this line. It's just the bottom of the page. So the first thing I want to do is looking up here, I want to fill in anything that's not already stitched. And when I say I work down in columns, you can see like this isn't a very strict line that's falling along that 10 by 10 grid line. I will let my colors kind of carry over into the next column where it makes the most sense. The reason for that is it helps to avoid a really harsh line. If you're stopping your colors very strictly along that gray line there where the 10 by 10 grid ends, you can sometimes see those lines appear when you look at the finished piece. But looking to this section here, I've got a couple sections that need to be filled in. So I'm gonna start by getting my needle loaded up with the color that needs to go in here and just start stitching. I'm using tulip needles. On projects like this where it's full coverage, if there's a lot of confetti in an area, sometimes it gets hard to like get the needle through the fabric. And those are cases where I actually do really like the Sullivan's ball tip needles. My most favorite brand of needles in the whole world. And I realize I'm maybe unique in how much I think needle brands make a difference. I know for some people, like they literally do not notice any difference in needles. I don't know, for whatever reason, I'm very particular about it. But I think too, like I have oily hands. I do have a little bit of a nickel sensitivity, not a full blown allergy, but a little bit of a sensitivity. So I do notice like when I use needles, they will tarnish very, very quickly. So I don't know if that's part of it, but I like something that glides really nice and I can just totally feel the difference in needles when I'm stitching. But my most favorite needles ever, they're called Pat's Favorite Needle, and they are no longer available, sadly. I feel like tulips are the next best, or maybe like even just the most similar to Pat's. And then I did mention I have a nickel sensitivity. I did just get a bunch of different pony blacks to try, and they have some nickel free options. Gold plated needles are another nickel free option that you can find. Um, I tend to find the gold plated for whatever reason, like still for me tarnish really quickly. Pony blacks, I can't remember the coating type off the top of my head, but it's not nickel and it's not gold. So I'm excited to try those as well. So essentially, what I'm going to do is just kind of continue stitching down in this section here. And I'm just going to keep with the color that I have loaded up on my needle and just stitch all instances of that symbol wherever they appear in this little section here. My current like whip at the moment that I have just kind of out in my stitching spot that I've been working on is actually a pretty large needlepoint project. So I really feel like I haven't done any substantial cross stitching in quite a while. And this actually feels really nice. Like, oh, I missed this. I do always feel like I have to mention that normally if I were sitting in my like stitching spot working on 28 count fabric, I would 100% have my magnifier lamp out and being used. But when I film Stitch With Me's, there's just really no good way to film and use the magnifier, sadly. So I do feel like because of that, I tend to make more mistakes. Obviously, it means a little bit hard to see exactly what I'm doing. And I, go a little bit slower. So just feel like I gotta explain why. And the tulip needle sizing is a little bit different than like standard tapestry needle sizing. So these are a size 25, which is about the equivalent of a size 26 tapestry needle. Hold on, guys, sorry. All right, I was having a double and triple check. I made a mistake somewhere along here. Last time I was working on this. And I don't know exactly what it was, but it is really just a bunch of greens in this area, so I'm not going to be too worried about it. Now, as I just kind of made my way across this little row here, there is one little stitch of this color over here. This is the next block over, but I'm just going to go ahead and stitch that real quick because I'm already here. I've already got the color loaded up. And that's kind of what I meant when I said I will carry my like stitches over into the adjacent block or column, like when it makes sense. And that is an instance when it just makes a lot of sense. The stitch I'm placing right now is technically in this 10 by 10 grid, but again, if you're doing some research on the parking method, it sounds like it's all these kind of strict rules, but you can do it however works for you. And so sometimes I will very strictly kind of stick in one 10 by 10 block. Sometimes, especially here where I'm like so close to the bottom of the page, I will just kind of work my way down maybe 2, 3, or 4 blocks at a time. I just completed this stitch up here. It doesn't appear anywhere else in this 10 by 10 block, but it does appear here. So instead of ending my thread, rethreading it, and then picking it back up all the way down here, I'm just gonna bring my thread right down here, put the stitches in that I need to. And how far you carry your thread is up to you. I think that's independent of whether you're stitching the parking method or not. If you do not like to carry your thread that far, don't carry it that far. For me, it's a balance between I don't want to have my thread carrying too far along the back just because it is going to make things like really thick along the back, which can make it harder to stitch, but I also want it to be enjoyable, and I don't find it enjoyable ending threads and rethreading my needle constantly. All right, so I just had those 3 stitches in here. And now if this thread didn't continue down here, I would go ahead and end it, but it does. It continues in this section down here. And because I'm not going to be continuing to stitch down here, I'm going to park my thread. So I'm looking at my pattern and I'm just seeing the next time that this symbol occurs. Which is going to be right here. And the most important thing when you're parking is that you just always put your threads in the same spot of your stitch. So I always start from the bottom left corner. So that's always where I park my thread. Some people will put half a stitch in and then leave their thread hanging just so it's really crystal clear. But this is how I do it. I just have this thread in the bottom left corner of this square where my stitch is going to go. Now on my pattern, I'm marking my pattern with a little triangle where this spot is so that I know that I have a parked thread there. So the question I get asked all the time, more than any other question, well, how do you know which thread is which? You know, how can you keep track of which thread is which? It's the pattern. I know this thread right here. I know because it's always in the bottom left corner of my stitch that I know exactly where this is. So if I look at that same exact spot on my pattern and I see the symbol there, the symbol corresponds to a thread number, and so that's how I know what thread number it is. Now, this is one of the hard parts about talking through it. I will not show patterns on my videos that are not my own or that I don't have permission to share, like from the pattern designer themselves. It's a copyright issue. So it's just not something I'm ever going to do. Designers have also been very vocal and clear about not showing patterns, you know, in pictures or videos online. So I don't do it. That's why I know I need to do like a standalone tutorial for parking where I have a pattern that I can show. And I think when I do that, it will make this all a lot clearer. And then there's other folks who have posted great tutorials on YouTube already that you can definitely check out. I think if you just search cross-stitch parking tutorial, like plenty pop up. Excuse me. All right, so next color, I'm working in this little section up here and just kind of seeing what occurs next. So there's no parked thread there, so I'm going to go ahead and find the color I need and get my needle loaded up. All right, and then the way I start my stitches, the way I end my threads, it is usually pretty like pattern dependent. Depends which fabric count I'm using, if I'm stitching over 1 or over 2, how many strands of floss I'm stitching with, whether or not it's full coverage. But when I'm stitching 1 over 1 and it's full coverage and I'm working on a high count fabric like this single-stranded loop start is, I think, the one I use the most often for starting new strands of floss. And of course, I have a video showing it in detail, so I will be sure to throw a link up to that video as well, because I know it's hard to see it when I'm stitching on this high of a count of fabric and stitching over 1. And I commonly refer to it as the single-stranded loop start. Really, you can think of it as like a modified loop start, because you can use it with any number of strands. I think it's just more commonly, you know, a solution for a loop start when you're using a single strand or an odd number of strands. All right, so I just have 1 stitch of this color all the way down here. And then it does occur again down here, so I'm going to go ahead and park my thread in that next spot where this color occurs. All right, and then moving on to our next color. Another question I get asked a lot about parking is, you know, well, what do you do if you have the same color, you know, here occurring over here? And yeah, it's just, I'll put a new strand of floss there. I think because this method looks so confusing, it's really easy to overthink like just some of the mechanics of it. The videos that I watched initially that really helped this method click for me were the ones from Teresa Little Stitcher. I think she has like a multiple video series on her YouTube channel. And that, like, again, that was the one I watched and I'm like, okay, this this clicks. Now it makes sense because it didn't for a long time. So I understand the questions that come in. But it, like I promise, it looks more complicated than it is. I think it just takes a while for the whole thing to kind of click into place. So this color that I just started is a dreaded confetti stitch. So that means it's just a single stitch of this color. There's no other stitches of this color anywhere around here where it would make sense for me to park my thread. So again, to start, I'm doing a single stranded or modified loop start. And then I know you've just been dying to know what the heck is going on over here. And you are about to find out. So again, you know, the way I start my threads, the way I end them does tend to be pretty like project specific. When I am stitching on full coverage charts, I like to use what's called a ending waist thread. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring my needle all the way over here. I try to bring it, you know, over from about where it is. All right, and then I'm going to bring my needle up, back down, and then back up. This really isn't securing my tail, right? It's just kind of keeping this in place. And now what's going to happen, because this is full coverage, I know that all of this, all of it, is going to be completely covered by stitches. As I move to this next column, this is all going to be stitched over. All these threads that are running across like this, remember they're running in a straight line across the back. So as this gets stitched in, all of those tails will be stitched over, and that's going to anchor them in place. It's just like if you were to flip your work to the back, take your needle, run it under some existing stitches to anchor your thread, and then snip that tail. It's the same exact concept. It's just instead of flipping to the back, I'm just kind of keeping my thread secured for a little bit until it gets stitched over. Once it gets stitched over, I kind of flick all these threads up and I just snip them from the front. And I feel like waist threads, we really are used to thinking of waist threads as a starting method. It's a very common way to start threads. So it's just kind of taking that concept, but doing it for the end. All right, so now I'm just kind of taking a look at my pattern and what is going to occur down here, what symbol makes sense for me to stitch. I've got like 2 more confetti stitches right in here, so I think I'm just going to go get those out of the way because they are my least favorite. And basically same exact process. Modified loop start to begin. Waist thread to end. A really common question about waist threads, well, doesn't it waste a lot of floss? It weighs a little bit more. Like this little part is extra compared to if you were to flip to the back and run your needle under existing stitches to anchor it. If you don't like the idea of any extra waste, might not be the best option for you. Again, for me, I am trying to balance enjoyment with practicality, right? So I'm okay with that level of waste because I know it's just going to make the whole stitching part a little bit quicker, a little bit more enjoyable. So I think everyone's got their own threshold, but also like, look, this is just the width of my finger. This is not a large area. All right, and then we'll get another confetti stitch out of the way. These are my least favorite. I really do question how much of a difference do they really make in the design, but that's okay. I really love when there's a confetti stitch and I go to my floss drop and I already have like a nice and short leftover piece of floss. So now I'm, again, just kind of working my way down, and I've got this thread here that's parked. And again, I know exactly where this stitch is because I know I'm in the bottom left corner of my stitch. So if I look at my pattern and look at the symbol that corresponds to that exact spot, I know exactly what color this is. It's DMC 581, if you were curious. So I'm going to go ahead and, just like with the rest of these, just stitch all of the instances of this color. And at this point, I'm just kind of working my way all the way down to the end of this page. And this thread was parked there because I had probably worked on that same color somewhere up around here. Or maybe even somewhere over here. Sometimes I will park my threads from here over. You know, again, there's no hard and fast rules. And if you're like researching the parking method, intrigued by it, you will see there's 50 different ways to do this, right? And some of them are like kind of have these rigid guidelines set up, you know, like, oh, you're stitching royal rows or diagonal parking, you know, whatever it is. But you can always learn one of those methods and then adjust it for what works for you. There's no cross stitch police that will come and take you away or anything like that. All right, and that's it for this color anywhere here, but it does occur again down here. So again, I'm just gonna park the thread in the next instance that it occurs. Right, and then I've got one last color to fill in that will complete this 10 by 10 block. So I'm gonna go ahead and get that color pulled out. It's always so satisfying getting to the less color of like any given section and just kind of filling in the blanks. I feel like I do always try and leave one of the more predominant colors of any given area to be last because I just do really like that. I like having just being able to turn my brain off and being like, okay, now I'm just filling in the empty spots. And it's pretty wild. I feel like I've done so little and it's already 41 stitches that have been done. And no, I have not been counting in my head and keeping track. It's just the Pattern Keeper app tracks it for me. Let's feel. You know? Sometimes you look and it's like, wait, that's wonky. But it's actually correct. All right, and I'm just gonna continue with this color down into this block and the one below. Again, this feels like it's all so nearly completed that I'm just gonna kind of continue working my way down. It is always really difficult to film on 28 count even weave stitching over one. My camera, I have to have it so close to the fabric. And if I try to like zoom in, it just loses focus so quickly. I do think at some point I need to do a camera upgrade and, do some research about what would be well equipped to handle that. Because I've definitely been able to like make it work, but it's not ideal. Surprisingly, I actually think my iPhone does a better job zooming in on this high of a count of fabric. But it's hard to film, an hour's worth of footage on the iPhone, get it transferred to my computer for editing. Like, I'm sure there's probably an easier way to do it than how I've been doing it, but just gonna pick this stitch up over here real quick. It's interesting. I've noticed this with definitely DMC floss. I'm not sure about other colors or other floss brands, but the coverage when you get into the darker colors, like definitely with 310, and this is 3371, this dark brown, it's like the coverage isn't quite as good when you get into the darker colors. I'm guessing it has something to do with the dye and how it interacts with the thread fibers, but I just always find it very interesting. Like I'll have great coverage and then I'll see a little bit of fabric peeking through on the darker colors. And it just feels like the coverage isn't as great. This pattern definitely has like its fair share of confetti stitches. Like I don't think I can ever get too far or get too much done without hitting some confetti. But I do feel like it's a pretty good blend. Like, it's not huge blocks of solid color, but it's not too bad. Real quick, I'm actually going to pick up this stitch right here because this color continues down here, but like I'm already over here. And this last little one over here is the same color. This was the first Heaven and Earth Designs chart that I ever started. And I remember when I first kitted it up and started it, and I did all the math of, okay, if I stitch an average of this many stitches per day, I'll be done in this amount of time. Really thinking that I would just stick with it and only work on this one thing and have it done in like a year and a half or something like that. Um, no. That is not the way this has worked out for me. I do intend this one to be a gift for my mom. She also cross stitches, and I feel like she's the type of person where she's made, handmade cross stitch gifts for everyone. Like she'll always do wedding samplers for anyone she knows who gets married. She does the baby announcements for all of her grandkids. And I was thinking about it. I'm like, you know, who has ever cross-stitched something for her? Like, I bet no one. So I was really excited to work on this for her. It has a hummingbird in the design and flowers, and she's a big gardener, loves watching birds. And we're just really going to hope that I can finish this in my lifetime. This is also very different from any type of cross stitch she does. So I was also thinking like that'd be cool because it's cross stitch and she does a lot of that and has made so many beautiful gifts for people. Um, but to receive something that's also a cross stitch, but just also very different than anything you've done, I think is also really nice. This thread felt so long when I first started with it. And it feels so short already. I just felt all along the back to make sure there's not like a big knot somewhere, and I don't think there is, but I guess it's a good bit of stitches. And this color definitely continues on below. It's right here, going to be the first stitch to occur in this 10 by 10 block on the next page. So mark off my pattern, park my thread. And then I only have like one parked thread in this whole area. I'm going to go ahead and stitch it now just to kind of get it done and out of the way. And it's only this one stitch, but then it does occur again down here. So I'll get this stitch done and just repark the thread down below. which will be right there. Oh my gosh, that's 90 stitches already. Ugh. This is like all confetti in there. So brutal. I'm just looking at my pattern. All right, not too much. Let's at least knock out a few of these. It's so funny because, when you have big blocks of just one color, it gets so boring. Like so boring. But confetti is also so painful. See, and this is why I like the perking method, because it's really cutting down on the amount of times that you're starting and ending your threads, rethreading your needle. Like, I'm so bummed that there's literally no more parked threads in this whole section. It's like, where did they all go? Come back. All right, but let's knock at least a few of these out of the way. Future me would be so happy to come back and be like, oh, look at that. All that confetti's taken care of. Now, sometimes these single-stranded loop starts will come loose, like they don't secure. So I always just kind of give it a nice big tug when I'm cutting away the tail, just to make sure it's secure. And then I do find, like, when I'm stitching 1/1 on 28 count, this all gets like so thick because it's good coverage, it's full coverage. Um, and that just helps, I think, with them get secured, because you kind of end up naturally catching the fibers of some of your threads around that area. These are always those painful pieces. Like, it's barely long enough to save it. I'm going to save it. I'm in a saving mood. Sometimes I'm not, and I will just toss a little piece of floss like that. It depends. All right, so of course the stitch right next to it is also very minimal, yet it is a very similar color. I think at some point with filming, I would love to have 2 cameras set up, because it's just too much moving around to, move my camera and zoom out every single time I'm doing something, like not in this little small area, so that you can see. All right. And this color has 2 stitches. So I want to know, if there's 2 stitches, do you still say it's confetti? Or is it really only a confetti stitch when it's just a single stitch of that color with nothing else nearby? And technically, the second stitch of this color is not in the column we're working on. It's in the one over here. But I care about myself enough to just get it done while I have my needle threaded with that color, and not end my thread and be like, oh, well, that's in the next column over, so I have to get it next time. No, I will do it now. All right, next color. This is a long strand of floss because it's just what I had on my floss drop ready to go. But don't get too excited, because this is just another confetti stitch. But the way, like, I tend to use floss drops is I have this piece of the strand of floss like already separated, probably left over from sometime before, and it's all my floss drop ready to go. So I don't mind threading my needle with this kind of long strand. I'll get done. Oh, what did I do? Can't tell if like a little knot formed, but I'm just gonna go behind it like I normally would and try to pull it to the back. Yeah, see? That's fine. But yeah, so I'll go ahead, get this stitch done, trim it here, and then, I'll just take that strand and put it right back on my floss drop, and we'll use it for next time. You have to admit, even if you're not a fan of the waist thread ending method, it looks very, very cool. Very satisfying look to the whole thing. I feel like I jinxed myself a little bit because I was saying just how quickly we got to having 90 stitches done. And now it feels like it's taken the same amount of time to get 4 stitches done. We're almost through it. And we've got a whole 1, 2, 3, 5 stitches of this next color. And you'll notice, again, one of these stitches is going to occur in this column here. But just like with the others, especially when it's a color like this where there's not a whole lot of stitches occurring, I will go ahead and just get it done now. And you can see here, obviously, this is completely filled in with waist threads. You can kind of double up if you need to. You could just move to right behind. I will say the only thing that will happen is this section's really filled up because there's probably just a lot of confetti in this area, as we are seeing right now. So it can start to get pretty thick along the back when you have confetti heavy sections and you're using ending waist threads. So sometimes I'll like switch up what I'm doing, how I'm ending my threads if I'm finding that is happening a lot. I think that's why I'm a big proponent of a lot of the tutorials I do. I like to talk about more than one way to do something. I'll talk to you about 10 different ways to start your threads, 10 different ways to end your threads. Because I just really do feel like it is so project dependent and stitching style dependent and just so many things. You will hear me become the most silent when I am trying to get my needle threaded. So the big pauses, or hopefully they'll just be little pauses in the video because I'm going to edit the very large pause out is me quietly trying to thread my needle. Okay, so that's all the confetti in this section. And then there's one more right down there that I do just want to get out of the way. And I do typically like to try and focus on the stitches with the least amount of instances first on any given section. Um, Not always, just sometimes I like to do it that way because then I feel like I can get those all out of the way. Again, not just filling in big blocks of color, but then I also feel like it makes the back a little bit neater because you're stitching over all that, stopping and ending and starting with like a big block of color. I don't know if any of that came out making sense, but I know someone will know what I'm talking about. It will click in their brain and be like, oh, yeah, that's how I am. And then the other nice thing about parking that we will see with this coming up color is like I would categorize this as a confetti stitch because it only occurs one time in this block. And then it only occurs one time down here, but I'm going to park my thread. So it won't really feel like a confetti stitch when I get to it the next time around. When I reach that parked thread, it's just going to feel like a parked thread. Oh, I like the screen. This is 988. All right, so stitch completed there. And again, just looking at, all right, which stitch does this color appear next? And it's going to be this one right here. So now it's parked, ready for when I'm working down there. Oh, I don't know, 5 years from now. All right. So I think there's only three-ish colors for all of this. So I'm going to go ahead and get them done because even with keeping my projects in zippered project bags, sorry, this 310 is really liking to not. I just felt another one form on the back, so just trying to pull it loose. There we go. But yes, even keeping my floss and my fabric in zippered pouches, obviously they still get covered in lint. I have 2 dogs and a cat, and there's no fighting it. And I do always usually have a lint roller nearby. It's like every time I film a video, I'm like, oh, remember to, take your lint roller and like clean it first. I never remember to do that. It's only after I start having to like pick lint out of the threads where I'm like, oh, yeah, that thing that I tell myself to do every time. I forgot it again. But if you don't have a lint roller at your little stitchy setup, stitching spot, it is a very handy thing to have. I feel like the problem in my house, though, is I'll put them somewhere and then, you know, someone inevitably always needs a lint roller when you have 2 dogs and a cat in the house. And so they're just constantly being picked up and used and then placed somewhere else. And it's just a constant hunt to find a lint roller. You know, it's like chapstick. You can have one in every room, but somehow you're still always looking for one or needing one. Oh no, I was so close and it just totally knotted again in the back. It's my fault. Like I kind of use long thread lengths. And so that definitely is going to create more knotting. And I've never really like gotten into or been a fan of thread conditioners. I think I've only tried one brand. I think the Thread Magic. I think it's like the more common one you see. 1, 2, 3, 4. And I just didn't like it. I didn't feel like it made any difference. So I don't know if you all out there are fans of thread conditioners or have some that work really well. Sorry, just double counting, triple counting where I'm parking my thread. We are getting there. 2 more colors left. I actually got way more done than I was expecting to, but I am so excited to finish a column. And in this video, I was excited to work on this project because I am stitching full coverage and stitching the parking method, and I always get a lot of questions about it. So I was excited to work on this project and kind of walk through the parking method and talk through it. I don't know how good of a job I did talking through it. You know, sometimes your brain's just not there. I do have a different Stitch With Me video working on this same exact pattern, really talking through the parking method, I think in better detail than what I did in this video. So I will also link to that video. If this one has just left you now with more questions than answers, that is probably the better video to watch. And I don't know if you can tell or just hear it, but it's definitely like getting pretty thick. So sometimes this is where I struggle a little bit with the needle. I'm also using a needle that's a little bit bigger than what I prefer. When I'm working on 28 count and I'm stitching over 1, I actually really like using a size 28 needle. I'd have to double check. I don't think the tulips go up that high. But yeah, this needle's a little bit bigger than what I would normally use, but it glides really nice, so I don't mind using it. But if you are ever stitching and you just feel like it's so hard kind of getting your needle through the spot that it needs to go, or maybe you keep splitting the fibers of the threads and like are just not bringing your needle up or down in the holes easily. These Sullivan, I always forget what they're called, Easy Guide needles or ball tip needles. They work really well for that. They are a little pricey. I do carry them in my shop. And they're actually very popular. They're selling way better than I thought they would because it is expensive. It's like $9 for 2 needles, and that's a lot. But again, I don't use them for my everyday stitching. I like to have them on hand for like specific scenarios, like when I need them, they're there. And they are a good quality needle. I do feel like they last a nice and good long time. And I think some people really do like love them where they use them in all their day-to-day stitching. But they're definitely something worth checking out and at least trying if you just feel like those things I mentioned is something that you're like consistently dealing with or struggling with. The ball tip needles do really help with that. And I don't know if there's other brands that make needles like that. I only know of the Sullivans. But if you know of a different brand or type of needle that's similar to that, like do please feel free to let let me know in the comments. Mm, sorry guys, my 10-pound guard dogs are keeping a watch on the neighborhood, you know? Sorry. No, they're not along the back. It's doing so well. Hopefully this video doesn't end up being too long. I feel like my average is like 100 stitches an hour. We'll definitely be over that, so we'll see just how much I was able to get done and how long this video ends up being. I definitely do make cuts. I try and keep it minimal, but really just sometimes the dead time where I'm like marking down my pattern, which you can't see, so it's not exciting, or getting floss out of my floss drops and threading my needle, which you also can't see, which isn't exciting. So the edits that I make, that's usually what it is. Or of course, if I have to fight with a knot for like 5 minutes, I will usually end up cutting that down at the very least. Because I think one of the more painful, frustrating things to watch is someone struggle to untie a knot. It's like you just want to grab it from them and be like, let me do it. I've got to stop talking about knots because my thread is hearing me. I really do love all of the pinks and reds and like magentas that are in this pattern. It's like a lot of my favorite colors. I love green, I love brown. I love all these kind of like dusty rose, deep magenta colors. All right. I can see my battery is about to die. I do have just a few stitches down there that I was going to finish, but I think I'm going to end the video here. Again, I see my battery flashing at me, but thank you so much for hanging out with me and stitching today. If you have questions about something you saw, please let me know in the comments. I will do my best to answer them. Thank you so much for hanging out with me while I got some stitching done. I really hope I was able to answer some questions you may have had when it comes to cross stitch in general, or more specifically, the parking method. I do feel like I said this the last time I posted a Stitch With Me video on this specific project, that I will do like a full complete parking tutorial in the future, which I do still plan to do. I know that's going to be a very in-depth video. It will probably maybe even need to be like 2 or 3 parts total, but that is something that will be coming in the future. In the meantime, if you have any questions that are cross stitch related or parking method related, or just confused or curious about something you saw in this video, please do let me know in the comments below. And if you liked this video, want to see more content like this in the future, and help support my channel, please do all the good things, liking, commenting, and subscribing. Once again, I'm Jackie from Adam Heart Cross Stitch. Thank you again so much for hanging out with me today, and until next time, happy stitching.